Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal, folks. My guest hasn't come yet. I'm not sure what happened. I'm sure there's a miscommunication here somewhere, or perhaps the times were missed. Regardless, I just wanted to come back on and greet all of you at the very least. Maybe he'll pop in and we'll continue. Otherwise, we may reschedule with this gentleman. He's a fascinating guy, Charles Rosenay, accomplished author, paranormal investigator for a number of years, and the organizer of Salem Paracon out in Connecticut. Very interesting guy with a lot of curious connections within his working field, and I do hope to see him soon. But regardless, let me fill you in with a couple of things that have been happening. Obviously, I haven't been doing shows as often as I would like to, given my history on the channel. And the reason for that is because, again, I've been working so hard behind the scenes to create some different type of projects. And you've gotten wind of a couple things that we've been working on, some things I can't mention yet. But in that same thought, the fruit of these labors eventually will come to light, and you guys will see what we've been working on collectively. It's fascinating. We've got quite a few things on the table, to say the least, and it kills me that I can't just spill the beans. But, we got to leave a couple surprises for you. If anybody has any questions for me tonight, I implore you, go ahead, put in the chat. I'm here for a bit. I'll hang out till, maybe 10:20, 10:25, just to see if Charles comes through during that time. And I do hope that he does. But regardless, with the Montauk documentary that we've been working on, there have been quite a few of you who have been following this pretty closely or have been involved in one way, shape, or form since the inception of this second documentary. Scotty B, I'm looking at you. We're working very hard on this, and it does look like we're going to be finishing this up. Man, I'm tripping over my tongue tonight. Looks like we're finishing this up by the end of the year. Now, there are two distinct reasons for that. The first is that this year is the very last year in the 40-year cycle. Now, Montauk goes along with many different types of cyclical fashions, wherein you're looking at a particular philosophy, or you're looking at an event that occurred, or the way that they had manipulated energy one way, shape, or form, purportedly, right? Cyclical, all of it. Now, this is sort of reminiscent of what you understand about the universe at large in respect to these circular patterns. You look at the Yuga cycle, look at, of course, the planets. I mean, there's so many different orbits. There's so many different ways that you can identify this circular pattern that finds its way within our psyche as well. So the reason this is so important is that because of the cyclical fashion, there is a point where the loops are closed and you can no longer access the same type of information that was perhaps readily available to us 2 or 3, 4 to 10 years ago. This is very curious. This is very curious to not only study, but to experience to some degree. Those of you who have been involved with this project in one way, shape, or form, there's a very good chance that you'll feel the end of this. So what does this mean exactly? Well, this means, the way that I have always looked at the project with the knowledge that we have today, it's about the healing that comes next. Not that we only have this last year, but again, certain things that we're able to access, given what they have done, will really cease to be accessible towards the end of the year with the closing of the cycle. It's the end of an era. And it didn't just end with the passing of, the 3 key whistleblowers with that project. It was obviously something more elaborate in respect to the energy that they put in some sort of motion, the impetus behind it, being so many different intentions. This is all braided into one crazy looking quilt out there in the ethers, so to speak, with certain patches that are reminiscent of energetic signatures, if we're talking metaphorically here. So I'm going to be going down in August. This, of course, I always visit on the dates that the project ended. And of course, one of the reasons for that is that the energy is so high. The energy is absolutely incredibly high. And at that time, you're able to jump into different meditations. And again, in my opinion, access certain things that perhaps you wouldn't be able to without being in the physical location. We've certainly documented some of those findings between Brian Minnick, Long Island Bigfoot, and myself, Mike Colantino. along with many others who have worked with this. In October, I'll be visiting Montauk once again. And this is where I can only give you so much information, but I will tell you that I was invited on an expedition with a very well-known Montauk survivor. And, regardless of, people's opinions about, this person or anybody who talks about being involved in these projects, whether it be Montauk or the secret space program or something else just as covert, there's an element of truth in this somewhere. Now, this person's idea is that we are going to witness something that unfolded, let's just say back in the 40s, okay? Some sort of resonant projection. And we hope to be able to capture that in one way, shape, or form, or at least experience that particular anomaly as it unfolds. So without being able to tell you too much about it, I can tell you right now that this is going to be one hell of an adventure come this year. And I really feel that there's a reason that we've had to push back some of this, even though we've had so many people involved and still involved within the project itself that we're creating here with the documentary. But moving forward, we got to get everything we can this year because, again, I feel that door is closing. Although it's a positive thing, it's certainly something that we need to acknowledge. Now, that's all well and fine. Of course, there are 2 more projects that I have underway. Jared Murphy and I, for those of you who are not versed with this particular plan, are working on a trip down to Belize to study a 6,000-acre plot, which purportedly has 3 megalithic pyramids buried deep within its earth. Now, not only that, we're looking for geoengineered soil. We understand that obviously there were many civilizations that used this in areas where the soil was just didn't work for anything. It wouldn't grow anything, dry, no nutrients, pH is all over the place. And if you want to look at something like this under a finer microscope, check out the soil that's been found all over the Amazon, which does not belong there. And obviously the reason that this soil was brought in and treated to whatever degree that it was that made it fertile, the Amazon itself does not grow the type of crops that people during these times were actually able to do within its own soils. It has to have some sort of additive to really ramp this thing up and make it robust enough to create some of the vegetables that people would certainly grow during those times. The truth is that people did live in the Amazon, and of course they survived, so many millennia. There has to be a reason and a way that they did this. They couldn't simply have just lived off the land in some of these locations. So Jared and I are very, very hard at work. We have many people interested in coming down with us on this expedition. And I think it's going to be an absolutely earth-shattering time. If we were to find just one of these megalithic structures, we would have already gone far beyond what anybody else has done within that area. Now, given where we're headed, yes, our Mayan ruins, defined Mayan ruins that people can go visit. This is all documented. It's there. But this particular plot of land has not been touched by anybody, let alone archaeologists or any other sort of field that's within the realm of academia. So for that reason, we have a lot of scholars and academics who are interested in joining us, as I'm mentioning here. And of course, we're very excited to be able to entertain that opportunity and idea as we put this plan together. But let's see what happens. I never put all my eggs into one basket. There are always snafus that you have to work around. But I do feel that if we're supposed to be there in this time, which we have to go before the rainy season, by the way, so we have a window here. If we're supposed to be there, we'll be there. And, if for some reason something didn't work out, well, there's always next year. But man, I want to get down there this year and really start digging and see what we can find. Let's see. Any questions from you guys out here? I'm going to make this a little informal tonight. I don't really get a chance to do this very often. I'm usually entertaining a guest and, even people throw in super chats, and I have just a moment to acknowledge it before I can, really give you the kudos at the end of the show. But I'd love to talk to some of you guys if you're interested here. I'm probably going to stick around for, I don't know, maybe another half hour. I just want to see who comes in. I told him 10, and I said I might move it to 10:30 just in case. But I don't know if that message was conveyed the way that I had intended. So maybe he'll show up at 10:30. We'll stick around for a little bit. Blue Chicken, yeah. Blue Chicken, my friend, it's great to see you. An avid supporter of the show. He's been a moderator for us. He's been a moderator and admin for the Facebook group that we have as well. But he stepped down because he wants to enjoy himself and just kick back and enjoy the show like everyone else. And I respect that. I love that. He's a great guy. But you did have a question earlier, so let me go ahead and address that very quickly. You know, when you're talking about protecting your energy or yourself from other people when you're out in public or at some sort of social gathering, there are certain precautions that you can take. Now, before you get into the realm of power objects, let's talk about a simple meditation, okay? What your mind is doing essentially, and I'm going to very much minimalize, the way that I describe this. What your mind is doing in its existence is acting as an amplifier. So you have a thought, and the more that you put your intention behind it, the more energy that you give it, okay, it becomes amplified and eventually will break into the third dimensional plane, so to speak, and you'll see this manifest. Nothing begins without an idea. And of course, there are, certain flows of energy that work within nature, but we don't know the overgoverning, I don't want to say souls, but entities or energies that preside over what we understand nature to be. We only realize and understand mostly from our own perspective and what we're able to do and capable of. So again, let's talk about this meditation here in one way, shape, or form. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything formal in respect to what you do. It's a matter of the visualization and being able to be tactile in a sense with that sort of thought. So one of the things that you can do, and it seems a little elementary, but believe me, this will work. Put walls up around yourself. Envision yourself behind stone walls in certain respects to that energy. Okay. And if you focus on that, you're going to create this type of energy around you. Now, in order to not seem defensive within this energy, you can instill a little bit of softness and love in it, expressing that you are creating a boundary. Now, I'm giving you the example of a wall. You can use white light. You can use any other sort of barrier that suits your need. But the intention is the same. You're putting up boundaries, and that's the most important thing that you want to take from that. Going into the world of power objects, we can carry certain stones with us to amplify our energy in a total sense. Some of the grounding stones are great: obsidian, onyx, pyrite or fool's gold, just to name a few off the top here. There are so many semi-precious stones out there that will help you. But one of the things I would caution you to do is to not just throw it on your body somewhere, but look up where the stone is supposed to sit. Each stone vibrates. You can see through the color, you can see through the material itself. It vibrates at a certain frequency, we'll say a collective matrix, okay, within the sense of math and science. And within this, it matches to certain vibrations our bodies hold. And of course, chakras are a major source of those vibrations, being the energy centers within our body and within our total sense. Okay. It's not just the physical. I think that energy is more of an expression. I think the physical is more of an expression of that energy rather than the other way around. So with that in mind, where you place that stone, it's going to be less or more effective depending on what you're doing. So, keep that in mind. Those two techniques are very straightforward, but do seem to work. If they don't work for you, send me an email. We'll go down another path. I definitely have other suggestions in how to protect yourself in this way. And combining some of the techniques that I've learned that, I can't take the time at the moment to go through because they're a little bit more extensive. But again, just to give you a place to jump off, Blue Chicken, this is where I'd go. Great question, by the way. Fantastic question. Angel Wing says tourmaline and sugarite, great protections and grounding. Absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many of them that you could get into. It just depends what works best for you. Many times when I was out searching for stones, or, times that I wasn't, I was just walking into a metaphysical shop just to see what they had. One of these stones might call to me. Now, maybe it's the color that sort of draws me in, and I pick this thing up and I can feel it. Intuitively, somewhere within me, it feels good to hold. So for those of you who wonder what that type of experience is like, it doesn't have to be any sort of earth-shattering experience, you're not being blown out of your body picking up one of these stones that you vibrate with. It's very subtle. And honestly, if you just sit with them for some time, you might feel it too. Not everybody's sensitive in this way, but I think you can find yourself to be sensitive in this way, as long as you continue to surround yourself the way that if you were in an environment that had certain affect, eventually this bleeds into who you are, unless you're consciously pushing this away or keeping it at bay for one reason or another. Let's see here. Yes, Blue Chicken says very consistent to advice I've been given before. Yes, this is where we start. Blue, get in touch with me. You know how to do it, my friend, and we'll go a little bit further with that. And we'll look at your specific concern and what you are dealing with. And I think from that we can mold something that's more cohesive for the individual. Although again, we're collectively working on this together. Hey, Beth, double kick chick. Beth. That was Betty. Yeah, good enough. Good to see you. Good to see you here. UFOs. What is going on? UFOs. Okay. Let's talk about this for a moment. Yes, I know, Third Phase of Moon has been covering this beautifully, along with GoofOn, doing the exact same thing. Some of the other channels have been tapping into the recent news of now 4 unidentified objects shot down over our skies in various areas. Obviously, we knew about Yukon, and of course, Canada has their hand in this too. So while you have 2 different superpower governments experiencing and perceiving whatever these events are in tandem, you have to wonder how much they'll actually work together as time goes forward. Now, as far as we can tell, we don't have much information about these objects. It's been stated that, they've been the size of a small car, perhaps tack shaped, almost looking like pods. But then you talk to or listen to some of the pilots that have been out there. I think at one point, it was the last time they shot something down very recently here. They sent 35 jet fighters up into the air. And when they came back and started talking about this, their experiences varied in so many different ways, which is, of course, kind of odd. In respect, I think the example that I was given at one point, or had tapped into through one of these news sources, was that, the object, when they got close to it, their electronic gear began to warble and get out of sorts, where other pilots said, well, we didn't have that affect. Well, just because one of them experienced it, the other one didn't, doesn't mean that the one that experienced it is saying something invalid. So we need to keep that in our heads when we're listening to some of these CIA guys or FBI guys who are now in charge of it, the FBI, talking about this as a figurehead or some sort of spokesperson in regards to what's happened. They'll dance around the questions a little bit, but they'll give you something, but then very quickly skip into whatever point they want to talk about. And in the case of an interview I heard recently, the guy just went right into the Chinese balloons that, have been in the skies. And of course, the very first one that we shot down recently, where Joe Biden dragged his feet a little bit, eventually it came down, but nonetheless, we were able to identify that. So if this isn't something that's conventional and familiar, okay, and I'll understand that if there's some sort of foreign entity with national security at hand when we talk about these things, we have to use some discretion. I'll understand that to a certain degree. Okay, but I'd love to have some proof that that's exactly what it is. I mean, show me some, Russian writing on the inside, some Chinese, characters somewhere. Just show me that it did originate here, to give us something to work on in respect to, what we're really thinking in our heads, because most people are jumping right to the idea that these are UFOs that have something to do with ETs. Now, let me tell you why I don't think that's the case. And I'll be very specific about this. As far as I understand, in the multitude of abductees, eyewitnesses, and people who have been studying this, for ages, they all say something very similar. And that is, we wouldn't be able to shoot down an ET craft. They're already a number of steps ahead of us, that they're not going to allow that to happen. Now, maybe these crafts were unmanned, and I suspect that they were. perhaps some sort of drone or surveillance that's up there in the sky, again, regardless of where it came from. I just don't see that being a reality where any ET race would allow 4 of their vessels to be shot down, time and time over here. So again, that's why I think we need a little bit more research and disclosure in what's happening here, because at the very least, there are people who are sitting in a state of fear saying, well, what the hell's above our heads now? Are these foreign governments coming in and trying to spy or pull something surreptitious? Or are these objects coming into our environment and atmospheres without any real source in the way of the direction that they came? So it's very curious what we're experiencing right now. And of course, this is on the heels of the last 3 years. Well, it's been since 2017, but I'm going to call it the last 3 years, okay, where they gave us all the wonderfully, beautifully decorated, redacted reports that they could then wipe their hands of, and go wash the ink off of their fingers and just say, hey, we gave it to you. Well, at least they gave us something, right? Okay, so that indicates at the very least that they've had all this and they lied to us for the entire time that they had it. Very curious times that we're living in here, folks. I have to say that it is exciting, but we need to stay critical. That is so important. Right now, we need to stay critical and certainly listen between the lines when you hear some of these officials talk about these events. In between those lines, you'll find an ounce of truth, but it's an ounce that if you take enough of what you find and put it together, becomes much heavier. Well, unfortunately, I don't think Charles will be joining us this evening. Again, we had the clock for 10, and it's now 10:30. That was a pensive time, and I still haven't got him. So that's all right. No problem. There's always some discrepancy. There's who knows what happened, but I'm sure he's doing just fine, and I will certainly reach out to him, and we will reschedule, given whatever conversation we'd like to have about that. I'd certainly still like to have him on the show, but we got to make sure that we're together on this. Let's see. I think that's about all I can really give to you on that UFO frenzy that we're going through right now. I mean, it's so new, and there's always more news coming out within the past 2-3 weeks. This is sort of taken over people's minds and psyches. Pay attention. I don't think it's disclosure. I don't think that's what anyone's intention is. And I've heard a lot of people looking at this saying, could this be it? I don't think so, because I still don't believe that any government wants us to know about this. It's just too compromising to the integral structure that they have politically, economically, socially, and so forth. Maybe we're on the verge of a collapse. Some of you out there might be familiar with a concept, and I'm going to struggle to remember all the details here, but I'll give the best of what I remember reading about. There is some sort of cyclical path. Okay, there we go again, right, with these circles, that has been traced throughout history, wherein people are able to predict that something would change during a certain period of time. And sure enough, there would be a world war. There would be some sort of famine somewhere in different countries. There would be some sort of cataclysmic event that would occur before it happened, but they'd recognize that, that something was going to happen, and very surely it did. Some very famous names in history were in line with this particular anomaly. Again, I'm sorry that I'm struggling to remember exactly what it was called, but perhaps I'm giving you a little bit to kind of research this yourself. And of course, if you find something beyond, you let me know, of course. The next time we're supposed to hit one of these apexes is in 2040. Now, a lot of people are talking about the economy collapsing, going back to, perhaps using wampum, seashells, and sticks as currency. Now, I don't necessarily see that happening, but we have seen the effect inflation has had on, not only our currency, but every other country's currency and the trade between. These are, concepts that I don't necessarily visit, but because there is some sort of esoteric implication behind it, it's something that, I'd like to discuss a little bit about. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we don't really know. We don't really know. What we've seen in history, again, is that we've only seen that there's a change coming. Perhaps in some small way, and immediate future will tell us whether what we're experiencing now with these UFOs being shot down has anything to do with what comes next on a collective scale. I'm very curious. Let me just take a quick look here through the chat, see what you guys are talking about. Angel Wing says, Dark Hour, it's the government trying to make us scared of the ETs so we don't accept them when they are here finally, or something different. Not right with it all, really. I do agree to some extent that could be part of this. There's a militaristic action here. There's a defense at the helm. If you shoot something down, you're indicating that it's a threat, wherein the fact is it may have just been in the air. I think the last one was cruising at about 40,000 feet, which could interfere with commercial aircraft. They take it down for that reason. It's not necessarily that they're afraid of it or have any concern in respect to it being an actual threat that way, the way that we would talk about it, something more global. It just has to do with the immediate airspace that's occupying. So that's curious. Yeah. And there's, again, yes, Gigi and Beth. Hi, Gigi, by the way. Beth, fear-mongering is a big problem. And God, look at what happened in the last couple of years. Without using the big C word, you guys, obviously know what I'm talking about here. What would happen if there was a real one? Okay, and I say that very directly because we've dealt with the plague, we've dealt with yellow fever, we've dealt with smallpox, all these different diseases that leveled the population of humanity. Yes, we went through some very difficult times, and we lost a lot of great people during the past couple of years, and in no way am I invalidating that. But could you imagine if something popped into the atmosphere the way that you watch the Night of the Living Dead and somebody breathes in a spore and tomorrow they're a zombie, what that would do? Okay, and it doesn't mean to be a literal zombie. Perhaps this is just something that looks like leprosy. Okay, and you slowly wilt away over a week. This world would never be the same, in my opinion. The way that things stand today, it would never be the same. And there will always be that fear-mongering until it eventually loses its steam and is not useful to us anymore. It's going to take a long time, or potentially could take a long time for that to happen. No, we won't see that come to full light in our lifetime, but I think we'll see the seeds of that fruit will eventually grow, and perhaps our children will start to see the stalk as it reaches the earth. That's how slow moving some of this progress is, but it takes all of us to continue on that path. Let's see, what else we got here? Yep. People are surmising that, these UFOs could be anything, and they could. They very well could. But it is curious that these military factions are blowing them out of the air one by one. I would think there must be some other way that you could take down a craft like that without destroying it entirely. I mean, yes, they've recovered a significant amount of material from some of these crashes. But nonetheless, I mean, you're destroying integral evidence as to what this object is by shooting it down in such a violent manner. I don't know. Maybe they're just going too fast, and honest to God, I have no idea. We just have enough information. We, as the public, could help to determine so many things if we just had the right information in our hands. We could look at this collectively and say, well, you know what? We can draw a consensus as to what it is we're seeing. Even if it isn't the truth, we may find out a little bit faster if we work together. Sounds utopian, right? But so help me God, the way things run today, it seems like a very viable option. We've got some time to go. All right, folks. Listen, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. I do apologize that my guest was unable to make it. But again, I will speak to him and hopefully we'll have the chance to reschedule. Appreciate each and every one of you. I will be back very shortly. I have a Montauk and Secret Space Program Survivor soon coming on. He's decided that he wants to come on the show and, go through what he's gone through. These people come out of the woodwork, but when we see each other, it's like an instant recognition in many cases. And those that don't have that experience, it comes within the weeks or the months ahead. Very odd the way that it all unfolds. And, going into some of these memories, as I've mentioned before, you wonder if it's past life or, if it's just an augmented timeline. But we have to keep in mind that some of these projects explored those avenues. And if you were born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and unfortunately found yourself in one of these projects, purportedly they could send you back in time to witness perhaps the beginning or a certain aspect of the Montauk project, and you could bear witness, whether it was physically or through some sort of out-of-body experience. People have purported both, which just makes it so much more confusing. The human mind has its limits in certain capacities, but we can always exercise outside of that, because the totality of ourselves does not sit within the body. And I think most of you would agree with me on that. Most of this information that we try to access, especially when you sit down with somebody psychically, it's in their auric field. You simply tap into their auric field and derive some of that information, perhaps the way that you would watch a picture show in certain circumstances. You can do it with yourself as well. But it sometimes helps to have somebody guide you along, and maybe it goes beyond using hypnosis to bring yourself into this. Well, listen, I'll answer one question very quickly. Crash Cody asks, will you ever write a book on Montauk? I've thought about it. I've thought deeply about it. One of the things that holds me back a little bit is because Brian Minnick is working on some things in this vein, and he has been compiling mounds of documented evidence for certain suspicions or accusations that went along with that project. And I cannot touch a flame to this man's research. It's just absolutely phenomenal what he's done. He's the Michael Schratt of Montauk. Okay, that's how I describe Brian Minnick of Montauk is Strange. By the way, go check out his channel. It's really cool. He's got a lot of stuff there, obviously dealing with Montauk, taking walks around, just exploring it in every inch that he can. It's a passion almost unrivaled when it comes to this type of thing. And to be honest with you, you never know. He might have been involved in this in one way, shape, or form, because there are things that we've talked about on the technical end, all right, that fall in line. But it's not that he identifies with it. It's just a possibility. So how many of us were utilized in any of these programs? And we understand that you didn't necessarily have to be there physically for them to utilize you. So how many? Stuart Swerdlow says every one of us. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Stuart Swerdlow seems like a nice fella, but he has been riddled with trauma from day one. Now, what that trauma actually is, I certainly couldn't tell you, because his story is incredibly fantastic. His interaction with Christopher Garantano of the Dark Files, what was it? Dark File Chronicles, whatever he had done with Montauk there. His interaction with Stewart was a little warlike. He was belligerent. And you have to wonder what triggers a person. But when you talk to people like that, you have to be very sensitive to it. And I don't think Garantano was really worried about being consistent in that way. He just wanted to get what he wanted to get, and he wanted to leave, and maybe even just give you a salute, thanks, and be on his way. So we can't be that way when we talk to people who have gone through such experiences, even abductees. I mean, it's another very strong experience that people purport. I mean, Christ, there have been women who say that they've had children taken from them, and we've covered this at length on the show. And you can't even imagine what that would feel like to just lose a child in that respect. Okay, still in the womb, but to then know exactly where it went, that the explanation is so illogical. Who do you talk to? Well, that's how most of us end up in the dark. Well, at any rate, again, I thank all of you for being here tonight. Apologize once again that it was not our usual scheduled program, but we will be back with the gentleman that I mentioned, along with Kishara Ninki. She's going to be returning, taking her time compiling vast amounts of research in regards to what she's going to share with us. And of course, I'll have Captain Randy Kramer back on soon. Just a matter of time here, but I do appreciate all of your support, all of your presence, and all of your love coming right back at each and every one of you. Folks, we'll see you next week on Dark Hour Paranormal. Ciao.